Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. That applies even on a human level. One has plenty of acquaintances, but only a few friends. A friend is someone that you can actually share with without that danger, that a confidence given will not go further or be turned against us, that what is precious to us is not misused. We can betray ourselves by giving confidences to people who do not deserve it. And the Lord has taken that risk in giving us the Blessed Sacrament. He has no shield of defense but ourselves. In the first instance, the priests who call him down and must protect him. But then also any soul who comes close to the Divine Majesty. We have to shield the Lord by the way that we approach him in church, by the way that we keep silence, by our gestuality, our interiority, our refusal to do other things in his sacred presence. And that, by the way, is not evident because that happens a lot. People who do other things on a mobile phone in that divine presence. The Lord sees it. He sees that we're not talking to him. But also the protection that we may not give with regard to children. We are responsible for what they do because they're not corrected or not properly formed. In the early centuries, the Christians in formation, in the catechumenate, were not immediately told what they were going to receive at Easter. It was the whole principle, the discipline of the arcanum, the secret. It was a great initiation, the Easter Vigil, baptism, and the bread of life. And of course, asking for baptism was asking also for inclusion in the number of those who might be martyred. That's what it was, very often. And so, in those early assemblies, there was nothing banal about receiving the bread of life. It was indeed often a viaticum, the food on the journey unto martyrdom. We need, in our time, to recuperate that awareness of what it cost the centuries. Also in penal times, in the times also of persecution and the Reformation in England and other countries, we need to be aware that this has cost blood and torture. And we need to retrieve something of the devotion and love of the saints who prepared so well for each communion. The East never really lost that, because their communions are more rare, and their celebrations also more rare. They're always solemn and long. There is a danger that if we multiply the number of celebrations, for whatever motive, even the best, it can become too automatic. We need never to have the notion that another celebration is more important than this one that we're at right now. It must be celebrated as though it were the only one ever. Calvary is there. The angels are there. And Jesus wants all our attention. He wants also our calm, because he can't get across a firewall made of tension, haste and stress. He needs stillness. The last thing we need in our mind is another celebration afterwards while we're at the altar. There has been in the air in recent times the presumption that we're all getting to heaven. And the way that also there is an onslaught on the Blessed Sacrament at funerals and weddings is an indication that there's a total loss of awareness of what the conditions are with regard to approaching our God and what sacrilege might be, unconfessed sin, serious sin. If one goes through life with this never handled, it would be presumptuous just to think that we're all homeward bound in such a state, and to give such a message to others, adding to the problem. The Lord, in the Gospel of today, warns us that that may not well be the case, that in fact it could be quite the contrary. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is easy, that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard, that leads to life, and those who find it are few. We priests who handle the dying and the dead are confronted with the issue directly. When one is beside a person who is about to go on, one can ascertain fairly quickly whether that person has spent his time in view of that encounter or not. Has he taken seriously confession? It can be picked up very quickly. But is he at this point first able to go to confession? Is he lucid? Does he want to? Indeed, does the family want it? That's another issue. And then, whether actually he's going to make enough preparation in the few minutes he perhaps has on earth to recuperate all eternity. If that is not the case, it's not safe just to give everyone nice, consoling thoughts. One doesn't upset anybody, of course, when it comes to a funeral. But this doctrine now, that everyone who dies goes to heaven, proclaimed practically in church each time, indirectly, is damaging profoundly the mystical body, because it's actually not based on a truth. It's on wishful thinking. No one wants any to be lost, but are they saved? It is reported that Our Lady told, I think it was Medjugorje, the visionaries, that souls were falling into hell like snowflakes falling to the ground. That means that from heaven she could see all these souls coming out of the earth like a cloud, about 2 souls per second on the level of the planet. And that massively there was a huge loss. Now, we don't see all that. The angels do. What must be the pain of a guardian angel when he sees that the one he's tried to look after is actually dying and heading the wrong way? So these need to be taken seriously. and it has become very difficult for them to be proclaimed. If a priest says certain things, he will be picked up, told what to say and not to say. Is that just human, or is there some sinister force at work? I noticed that actually there was a strange interference with regard to this particular talk. For some strange reason, nothing would work technically when it was being put up. There was, as it were, interference from some strange source, mysteriously, as though this message was not to be heard. There's an old adage in Latin, is fecit cui prodest. He did it to whom it serves. You know who. One day, shortly after ordination, my prior said, would you do a funeral? It was at Sejano on the mountain. And he told me what I had to do, including asking the person in the sacristy before going on the altar, what did the person do, so as to have something relevant to say. And it turned out that the person had been away from the sacraments for years, in an irregular union, and because they hadn't called us, that wasn't put right before the person died. So one does, of course, all one possibly can. In any funeral, it's the Lord's mercy that we're depending on. But when we got to the graveyard, the cemetery down at the bottom of the mountain, I was amazed to see that we were putting this coffin practically right next to the coffin we just put there about a week or so earlier. It was the coffin of our dear Vicar General, a holy priest, faithful to his vows and his life, all his priestly life, and a great help to our community. He always wore his cassock. He was a holy man, given all his life from earliest days to Jesus. And there he was. He, like this lady, had died in an advanced age. They'd lived about the same time, the same period. And then we put this lady in. And, of course, while not knowing the fate of one or the other, one just has the question mark over each coffin. This priest, no doubt, was going to great glory. But the other, where was she going? All these funerals are very cosmetic and polite. But what is the story on the other side? And when I saw how the dates on each expanse of life, those two were roughly the same, they were both about 90 years of age by the end, I just wondered, what is that expanse of life, long though it may seem, 90 years, but a tiny dot when compared with the parameters of eternity, which have no parameters. That tiny dot decides which way all eternity will go, and irrevocably it won't stop. It just goes on like space. Is there a lid on the universe? Is there an end to eternity? It would seem that that is what eternity is. That was the whole point about the warning of the Lord. It's serious, serious stuff. And we just paste it over cosmetically. We need to sit up and be aware that there's a sinister force that just doesn't want us to think about it or face it or talk about it, especially in public, lest we upset anyone. Our Lady was not afraid healthily to upset the little children at Fatima, and also as it happens at Medjugorje, showing the other side. Why? So that they might warn all mankind that that was the place where souls went when they weren't dying in a state of grace. And she wanted and pleaded for prayer and penance, lest that be the case. The gospel, just with a part of it, does not have any sense. We have a Saviour because we need to be saved. And we need to be saved because there's something to be saved from. Take away that, and you've got no drama in the universe. Even a child has the intuition that there must be some kind of retribution. It makes no sense that all have the same eternity when all on this side behave very, very differently. And the soul knows it secretly. We know there's a danger, and all we can do is poke fun at it, just to get out of the way of what is actually very uncomfortable. Alas, we can't escape the one thing that will never, ever, ever go away. Burying therefore this good soul, hoping for the best, and seeing those two coffins, now not in the ground, because in Italy they go into the vault, into the wall of the cemetery usually. But there they were, one next to the other, at the same time, beginning and end, and all eternity ahead. Two tombs. Two hollows, side by side, where morrows long commence their onward journey, ne'er to cease. In parallel, in hell or heaven, in song or howling, or long harrowing, in peace, or wanting but a moment, evermore. For that no priest did come, no priest like this, that calmly shut his eyes upon this store of moments weighed and gathered unto bliss. Oh, mystery, where history lies still, in characters indelible upon the book of all that live. Oh, flick of will that will or will not go where all have gone, but only did they will. For till the end, that end ne'er can, a man know of.